Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, my name is Dave Scott. We got a short week this week as I will be off to UFO Con in San Francisco on Friday. But tonight we start off strong. Dr. Simeon Hein is here. What is it going to be like when E.T. is here? You and I believe he's here, but we're going to find out the ramifications of all this coming up momentarily. But first, we need to say hello to each and every one of you. Why? Well, because that's how we kick off this show. Kitty Caddywhack in the gold medal position. Race fan with a silver. Tim Mothman and his goatee taking home a bronze medal tonight. Tracy Benna, how you doing? Nice to have you here. Paramarv looking good tonight, my friend. T-Bone, my man, how you doing? Luscious Jules, good to see you as we scroll on down to Mel WD-40 lubing us up for tonight's show. Because when you're talking with Simeon, you always got to come in nice and smooth with smooth questions, smooth answers. It's going to be good. Thank you, Mel. Don't forget to give yourself a shot as well. Paula Fost is here. Paula Fost will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Forrest Louie, good to have you here. Hi there, Chris and Robert Lamoth. Necessary Dialogue, JSCO, and Trucker Andrew. Nice to see you, Trucker Andrew. We'll see you in about a month, bud. Can't wait. All right, scrolling on. Yeah, we'll be seeing each other at Nebraska Bigfoot Conference. Thunderhead, how you doing? Nice to have you here. As we scroll on down, K17 Odd, good to see you here. Road Flare and Fap Nuts, nice to have you here. Fap Nuts will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Frankie B, nice to see you, my friend, as we scroll on down on our roll call. Carol Amerio, thank you for joining us. And who is next in our field here? Well, it's Jaquetta and Aussie Boss Tiger. Nice to have you here tonight. United We Stand, thank you for joining us. And B, nice to see you. Thomas Rock, good to have you here. Paranormal Discussion, Mickey G, how you doing, my friend? Algaray over on Twitch, so excited that Simeon Hein is here tonight that he literally restrung 85 guitars in 38 minutes to prepare for Simeon tonight. Restrung 85 guitars. Good job, Algaray. Panda on Fire, nice to have you here. Walter Kochabinski and Creepypasta, good to see you. Jerens Carter, nice to have you back. East Coast Turnaround over on X, thank you for coming on in. As we scroll on down to say hello to Benno, my man. Nice to have you here from Australia. We scroll on down and we say hi to Crystal Cat. And who is next? Undead Jed and Stephanie Kenny Blankenship. How you doing, my friend? I'm Hardcore on X. Nice to see you. Kathy Evans, Gary J. and Wilfred Brimley. How's the diabetes tonight? Please give us an update if you don't mind, along with an update on your mustache. That would be perfect. Scrolling down. We have next, let's see here. It's the lovely, the talented, and the beautiful soul. Kira has returned. Hope you're doing well, my beautiful friend. I love you. Say hi to Mark for me. Give him a big hug, and I hope you're feeling well. Let me know, okay? Let me know. All right. Scrolling on down. Up next, we say hello to, let's see. I think we're almost caught up. Dr. Bob, how you doing? Nice to have you here. And Mike Rivers, good to see you. Denise Corwin, welcome to SOR Chat. Rocket UFO, welcome to SOR Chat. And Pam Harris, nice to see you. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're glad to have you here for Dr. Simeon Hein. What are we going to do if aliens are real and are here? What happens to all of us? We're going to find out momentarily. And then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller, Grant Baker with the UFO Report. It's going to be a good show. Do me a favor, everybody. Super Chat is open and throw those horns up. Let's rock. Oh, maybe not yet. I apologize. I missed my count. We're coming back in like 25 seconds. Our store is open on our website, spacedoutradio.com. And don't forget, please support my new YouTube channel, Haunted 108. I would love it if you go there. It's youtube.com/The Haunted 108. The Haunted 108. Now let's throw those horns up. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Shush. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears towards the little cabin in the woods, where together, my friends, we own the night. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Caribou Con. Go to cariboucon.com. Get your tickets for a great paranormal conference in British Columbia, September 18th through 20th. We have a great show tonight as we are going to talk alien contact and some Bigfoot with Dr. Simeon Hein coming up momentarily. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller will kick things off with a spooky story. Then Grant Baker will give us an update on General Neil McCaslin and more on the UFO report. So let's get right to it. I love it when Simeon Hein is on the show. Dr. Hein is a sociologist, author, and researcher whose work explores the intersection of consciousness, science, and unexplained phenomena. He received his degree in sociology from Washington State University in 1992 and focuses his research on nonlinear methods, complexity theory, and the relationship between technology and society. Dr. Simeon Hein first began studying remote viewing in 1996 and has been actively involved in crop circle research ever since. In 1997, he has taught remote viewing at the Mount Baldy Institute in Boulder, Colorado, helping students explore the potential of human consciousness and perception beyond traditional scientific boundaries. So we say thank you to Dr. Simeon Hein for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm doing great.
It's been a whirlwind for you in travel, trying to get out of Washington, D.C., speaking at a Bigfoot conference near the Pentagon. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I know Bigfoot went in that area.
Yeah, we brought Bigfoot to D.C. We're lobbying for Bigfoot. I'm personally in favor of Bigfoot having voting rights, so we want to register Bigfoot to vote. And no, I really do have a petition. It's on change.org/protect Bigfoot. I really do think it's time that we recognize that these creatures, beings, ancient humans, whatever they are, there's some recognition of the reality. But yeah, Dave, I was at an event there. It was at the Lost Origins Art Gallery in Northwest Washington, and it was a two-night event showing the film A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, the second in the Flash of Beauty series from the Resonance Pro film production folks from Portland. And then in the second night, they wanted to do a Q&A about dark matter monsters and how I wrote the book and my ideas, the sociology of the paranormal and why it's so challenging to talk about these topics and get society to accept that they're real. So we had a good time. It was a little challenging with the weather today, as a lot of you know. If you're in the U.S., we had some crazy weather in the past couple of days, and I'm glad to have made it back in time for the show. So thanks.
Well, I'm glad you're here too, my friend, because, it would have been weird not having you here and me talking to myself. Yes. It would have been weird. But the fact that you were able to do that, we really do appreciate it. You've always been such a good friend to us here on Spaced Out Radio. You love these topics, and you have the unique perspective to bring a scientific understanding to what is going on. Does anything really amaze you anymore with these weird and strange phenomenal events?
Yeah, I feel amazed every day. I feel very fortunate to feel amazed. I think it's very easy to be on Earth and feel bored and just accept the kind of consensus reality view that we're taught in school. But as I've grown older, I've realized that what we were taught in school is very limited view of reality. It's much, much bigger than that. It's as big as your imagination, folks. That's how big reality is. And what really makes it rewarding, Dave, is exactly what you said. The more you study in these topics, do you think people have already figured everything out? No way. Just read books on these topics, the classics. People have been studying parapsychology for hundreds of years. And there's new works, new authors, this, new experiencers, people who've written books. There's always more to learn. I've just been going through James Lukatsky's books, not just Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, but the second book, and I just finished that on the plane tonight, about the UFO program, OSAP. When you see what that guy says about how complex UFO encounters are and how it involves people having psychic and paranormal experiences after their encounters, before their encounters, going all the way back, Dave, to Kenneth Arnold. I am not kidding. Lukatsky says that Kenneth frickin' Arnold in 1947, one of the original UFO sighting cases in the U.S., right, by Mount Rainier.
Yes.
By working for Search and Rescue, I believe, a businessman from Boise, and the saucer skipping, where the flying saucer term came from. According to Lukatsky, after that encounter, Arnold started hearing disincarnate entities in the house, orbs, and other paranormal phenomena. I think that's literally what the quote is. I mean, and he says that's where the hitchhiker effect started. Did anyone know that started with Kenneth Arnold? So all I'm saying, David, is there's always more to learn about this, and I think we're making a lot of progress. So yeah, it's very exciting, and it's a great time to be involved in these topics. And everyone out there, you should feel very good that you've stuck with these topics, because I think we're going to end up discovering a lot of very interesting things. And it's going to turn out that this older paradigm that we're emerging from was not necessarily wrong, but just highly limited. And those of us that had curiosity about these topics are going to turn out to be proven to have been moved. We were moving in the right direction the whole time.
I want to get to the topic of the night, because we do have to talk some Bigfoot now. We're number 2 with you, with the latest up and coming South by Southwest documentary that's being played at South by Southwest. And, the Patterson Gimlin film is fake. And I know I don't believe it. I believe you don't believe that either. And we'll get into that in hour number 2. But one of the subjects that I wanted to talk with you tonight, and this is why it was important for me to have you on, is because you look at the big picture of things. And with all the talk over the last few weeks about Donald Trump releasing the UFO files and what Barack Obama said that aliens are real. And there has been all of this talk recently, really bringing this subject into the mainstream. One thing we haven't talked about is the cause and effect on this planet on what will happen if it is announced that aliens are here.
Yes. Dave, this is the big one. This is really the big one. Just
believers in anything like this. And I think
no, I got you on that. Dave, I think this is the big enchilada here.
Do we have you, Simeon?
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. That was weird.
Yes, a little interference. Are you there, Dave?
Our signal is good.
Yes, I said it seems fine on my side. Can you hear me? Okay.
You're having some major technical difficulties right now. All right, Simeon, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, there we go. So let's
hello, Dave. Earth to Dave. Come in, Dave. Houston, we have a problem.
It's on my end. It's my signal right now, Simeon. So
that's okay. I'm going to keep talking. How about while you figure it out?
Yeah, you keep. Right? Well, the problem is my radio people are not going to be able to hear you. Okay. So I think we're getting out of this issue right now. So let's ask you once again before the aliens come down and buzz my internet again. Okay, are we ready for ET contact?
No, Dave. This is an excellent question. And it's something that I think about all the time, because I think this is what the whole thing comes down to. I think if there's any government cover up, the misinformation program that's been going on for a long time, that like James Lukatsky in his recent interviews, with Corbell and Knapp said that it's still going on. We're all being subjected to a disinformation program right now. If that is happening, I think the main motivation is not just to protect advanced technologies from being discovered by adversaries or those conventional arguments. I think there is this fear on the part of the powers that be that it might cause social collapse or panic. I just think that's still an issue on the table. I don't think that would happen just because of shows like this and others that have been going on for a good long time, doing their jobs, getting human beings acculturated to this idea that there's other types of intelligent life forms, maybe more intelligent than we are, that are around. But this is obviously a big one, because it's just all of you in your imagination. Just consider the possibility that this announcement is made that extraterrestrials are already living amongst us. They could be your neighbors. They could be people at your workplace, and you didn't know it the whole time, and they were disguising themselves. Or they look just like humans and were doing a very good job of impersonating humans. I mean, how would you react to that? Because it doesn't take a lot to cause social disruption, as we saw during COVID. If a certain percent of people decide they're not coming out of their homes, it can kind of break down pretty quickly, and the store shelves look pretty bare in short order. So I think this is a big issue and a big part of it. When I talked to Colonel Robert O'Dean, was he a Colonel Sergeant? Colonel Robert, remember from he had worked in NATO?
Yes,
Dave?
Robert Dean, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Dean. And I talked to him at the International UFO Congress in Laughlin and so forth. And he told us, and I think you're familiar with the story, so I won't go into it too much, but he said at SHAEF, NATO headquarters, SHAEF, one night, some guy said to him, hey, Bob, do you want to see something interesting? And they showed him this he said it was thick, a thick report NATO had done on extraterrestrials. They had seen these objects coming over from East Germany, and they weren't sure what they were, but they found out that the East Germans were seeing them come over from our side. So each side thought it was during the Cold War, thought it was the other guy's bogies. But it turned out they weren't anyone's from Earth, and NATO concluded there were 4 species that were visiting Earth, the types that you're familiar with. And according to Bob, one of them looked just like human beings. You wouldn't tell them apart. And I went up and asked him, I said, but Bob, were they human beings that had left our planet and come back, or were they really extraterrestrials, aliens that looked like humans? Were they humans who had returned, or did they? He said the book didn't say, but he said the appendix was this thick. This is what he raised his hands up. He said this thick, and it went into all the details of the 4 species. Now we're told by people familiar with the topic, Stone and others, that there were hundreds of species known about by the late 70s. But back then, Bob said it was just 4. So I think this is, in this NATO report, Bob tells us that there was this concern about the implications of having not just the extraterrestrials that we could tell were different from us, but the ones that look the same and everything in between. So you guys can use your imagination here to see how complex this gets so quickly. So this is the big issue. Would we be able to handle that truth? It really depends on how close they are to us. Are they in their ships up there, or are they already integrated? Well, here's another possibility, Dave. Do extraterrestrials even resemble anything we're familiar with? Let's not just talk about the ones that look like Bob said, just like humans. I've often entertained this idea, and I don't want people to think about this too much because it's kind of weird. Maybe they're already here and they look like something like a familiar thing, but they're not, like when you go, maybe they look like trees or bushes or even objects in your home that they can shapeshift. Okay, it's enough about that. I don't want people preoccupied with this, but you see how complex it gets?
It gets very complex. And, I think one of the things that I started looking at a couple of years ago, I remember having a conversation with Lou Elizondo right after the pandemic. And, I think for a lot of us, coming out of that, there were things we questioned on whether or not we were being played or not, the severity of it all. And I'm not here to debate the whole pandemic because that gets very political. But I remember asking Lou about this. I said, did you guys watch how people were treating people during this worldly event? And were you paying attention? Because this is probably as close as we're going to get to judge people on their actions, like everyday people on their actions, when, if aliens were to come down. And he said, absolutely, we were watching. And I'm paraphrasing the conversation, but basically he said we failed, and
Yeah.
it was failure. It was failure in a number of ways. Going to the grocery store, taking too much milk, taking too much meat, the toilet paper epidemic. You know what? People were still cutting trees. I live in a logging town. Even during the pandemic, trees were being cut, which means there's toilet paper. Okay. We failed as a society. We were ratting out our neighbor for having people over for Christmas.
There you go.
Whether you believed in the mask or not, people were ratting people out. And when we looked at it all, society really saw a lot of good, but it saw a lot of bad as well that was concerned for the alien side of everything. What's your thoughts?
No, I think COVID was a really good test of all this. even a lot of what was passed off as science is now being questioned whether there was any legitimacy to it at all. And this I'm reading in Science magazine. We had this sort of knee-jerk reaction just to vaccinate everybody, and how quickly employers were willing to say you can't even work here anymore if you're not vaccinated. We didn't even have the proof that vaccinated people were more or less contagious. That was a debate I was reading about in Science magazine every week. It wasn't necessarily clear that unvaccinated people were more contagious or not. But there was this real harsh reaction. Governments snapped into action doing what they like to do, which was create rules and regulations. I still remember going to visit my mom in New York and seeing the National Guard right there at the gate. They would not let you into New York State unless you had been vaccinated, and they were checking your vaccination card as you got off the plane. As you got off the plane. Was that really necessary? I'm not sure. I think governments like to do what they think they're supposed to be doing, which is enforce law and order, and they can go too far in that direction without the proper evidence. I always thought, you know what you're saying, Dave, it makes you think about a lot of things, because I always thought we were an evidence-based society, but what I saw happen during COVID, and I'm a believer that masks helped and everything. I'm not a conspiracy theory about it. I don't believe in conspiracy theory about this. However, there was so much done without the proper testing, the safety of the vaccines, things that we would normally agree are important. So I think a lot of it was questionable, and whether we failed or not, it definitely showed a lot of negative aspects of the social control, people hoarding, and yes, even what you're saying, people treating. I remember going to parties and having debates about vaccinations. Some of the parties of friends I went to, they were all pro-vaccination. Other people, I went to other parties and I was the only person there that had vaccinated. Everyone was anti, and it was kind of a polarization. So whatever you think about that, you have to ask yourself, extraterrestrial contact, or even if it's ultra-terrestrials, whoever these beings are, if they were to emerge and finally engage with us on a regular basis, and we were to interact with them and even go on their ships and go to wherever they're from, I mean, what would that do? Because human beings are already we're a little afraid at the moment with the current political situation here in the US. So you play this clip in the beginning of the show that I've listened to so many times, and it always makes me think, was Ronald Reagan right? Would it actually have the opposite effect and cause all these wars we have on the planet to cease very quickly, because we'd all realize we have a lot in common compared to the others? And there could be so much diversity with these types of extraterrestrial life forms that one possibility is that it makes us feel like we have a lot in common. What are we doing fighting each other in these wars that are going on in Eastern Europe and Ukraine and Iran, and all incredible levels of violence that are going on the planet right now? Maybe Reagan was right. Maybe that would end in short order. We realize we have to pull together as the human race. So there's a number of possibilities here. I think the folks that model these things in the Pentagon and these other think tanks and things, I don't think they know which way it's going to go. I don't know which way it's going to go. None of us do. But I'm willing to bet that it goes in the right direction. I'm betting on the universe here. I think the universe knows what it's doing. And I think the nature of evolution is for species to eventually come in contact with each other one way or another, however long it takes. And I think that's the direction we're going in. We're going to meet these folks. It's coming up one way or another. We're going to meet and intermingle with them, and the chips will fall where they will. But for those of us who've been part of this show for so many years and other shows like this, I think we've been inoculated against that fear, because every time you have a guest on this show, people come up with are exposed to new and weird ideas, including when I'm on the show too, weird ideas. And that's good. That's a good thing.
All right, Dr. Simeon Hein, when we come back, are humans ready for extraterrestrials? It's a big question. Nobody seems to answer it, but we will on Spaced Out Radio next.
Got me going on my soapbox.
All right, there we go.
Your signal's good now. I'm having no
Yeah,
problem.
I don't know what caused that. I apologize about that to our listeners. You. That was weird. Very weird.
Here, let me. How many minutes do we have? I'll come back in a sec.
We got about 4.5.
4.5.
I'll take you out.
Okay, I'll be back in a sec. How about that?
All right. There we go. There we go. Yeah, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it. And I know Paramarv will put it up here because he puts up everything. He's like Frank's Red Hot Sauce. He puts that shit on everything. Thank you for that too, Paramarv. I appreciate that. My new YouTube channel, which is The Haunted 108. So it goes along with my project that I've been working on. And the videos on there you've probably already seen, but I would really appreciate if you guys could do me a favor. I don't ask for much, but if you could do me a favor and go give it a like and subscribe and share it with your friends, because we got some real good, cool stuff happening. Integrationing, how are you doing? Nice to see you. And yeah, it's a really cool thing we're putting together here, and it's all going to tie in. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I would appreciate that. No interviews on there, just going to be haunted endeavors. That's what's going to make it fun, haunted endeavors. And Paramarv puts that shit on everything. That's right. Good job, Paramarv. Appreciate you for that. I've got a new project, Simeon, that I'm working on right now. Our local museum that's about 3-4 miles from my house. It's one of the only museums in our province that isn't government funded. So I went to the board in January, at the beginning of January, and I said, I got this idea to raise some money for you guys. And I said, let's turn this into a paranormal tourism adventure place. Because I had already done ghost tours there that were very successful. And by God, they went for it. They thought it was a great idea. So I'm literally going to be turning it into a haunted bed and breakfast.
Nice.
And all sorts of things going on there. And so we just recently, as of yesterday, that's how recent, I just put a YouTube channel up. So I've been making a bunch of videos. I got to show you. You'll like this here. You'll like.
Dave, are you saying you're turning a museum into a bed and breakfast?
There is a house there that we have that we're going to turn into a haunted bed and breakfast. Yeah.
I think that's going to be extremely successful. People love that sort of thing. People love it.
I want to show you one of our ghost photos here, because this is really cool, my man. Oh no, it's not on that one. Go here. So we have this giant Clydesdale barn. Okay, it's about 70 yards long, and it was built in 1908 for a gentleman named Captain Watson. And Captain Watson died in World War II, or probably World War I in 1915. And one day in 2019, I took a photograph of one of the horse stalls. And, where am I here? And I took this picture. I'm trying to hurry up here. I took this picture, and then I found a picture of what he looked like. So there he is. And there's the photo. Same dark eyes, same facial shape, military hat, mustache, everything. I don't know if you could see that very clearly.
I can, yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, on the right side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see on my screen, but I see something. I can see something there. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yes. Who did those little videos? Is that your creation?
I did.
Nice.
And I have my 12-year-old son editing them because he loves editing.
Oh, good.
Yeah. We're coming back in 15 seconds. Thank you to JSCO, Area 54, and Pam for the super chats. Thank you. And here we go, everybody. We're into the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Dr. Simeon Hein is our guest. What are we going to act like? How are we going to be as humans when we are told and find out that aliens are here? But first, we want to remind all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. On X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. And after that mouthful, let's bring in Simeon Hein here. What are we going to be like when aliens are officially here? This is a big question. It's a burning question. And right before the break, you know, we talked about some tests that people have gone through, especially with the pandemic. I don't agree, Simeon, and this is just my opinion. I don't agree that humans are going to be ready. I don't want to be the pessimist here, okay? But the way I look at it is half this planet still prays to some sort of religious deity, where they all feel, for the most part, that anything that comes from the sky or anything that is not explained as human or what we know is demons, is satanic, is from the devil himself, Beelzebub's best friends, his army, that they are coming to start Armageddon, which is the start of the end of the world. And then we have the other people who we do have to worry about mental health. We do have to worry about the financial system, and could that cause a crisis? I mean, is it a grow-up time for humans, or is it something that we're going to all of a sudden see a big shift in belief and pattern?
Yes, that's exactly the question, isn't it? The person I was referring to before, by the way, was Sergeant Clifford Stone. You had probably heard of him. He did those alleged crash retrievals, I think about 16 or so, and he talked about the different species. But towards your question, you know who I'm thinking about? Travis Walton. I'm thinking about Travis Walton because he gave us a lecture at one of the Open Minds UFO conferences outside of Scottsdale, Fountain Hills. And I still remember the impact it made on everyone when he said, if anyone thinks he would have made that up for popularity, you'd be crazy, because his town was filled with religious fanatics, and his family endured unending hostility from the rest of the town. If I'm not mistaken, it was Snowflake, Arizona.
Yes.
Right? And he described what it was to have people come up to the house and just start harassing them. And it never ended. It never stopped. And that's what you're talking about, because these were deeply religious people who thought he had encountered demons. And they harassed his family and persecuted them. And he said, if you think we would have made this up for any sort of fame or fortune, you're out of your mind, because this is the last thing you ever want to have happen to you in a small town. And in fact, just thinking about that's exactly what Bob Gimlin said to me when I talked to him once. He talked about the horrendous reaction of the people in the town of Yakima. We can talk about that later with the film you're talking about, but his wife was a banker, worked in and they had bottles thrown at their homes and everything. So yeah, on one hand, Dave, you're absolutely right. I can think of a portion of society that would have a negative reaction to this in a really big way, consider it to be demonic and satanic. Even in some of the scriptures from like the Dead Sea Scrolls, they talk about some of these monsters in the Bible, and they don't describe them very nicely, you know. I think the phrase is sons of bastards, Lilith, and desert howlers, and things like this, and says you need to avoid these creatures and things. I mean, this is something that it's very interesting to look into, to see what people thought about some of these topics thousands of years ago, if you can even interpret it. But on the other hand, I have to agree with Digger Dog here in the comment section. Just a comment I saw go by, I think you saw it too. There are times when we're called to grow up as a species and to evolve. And there are times when we've had to do that, when scientific discoveries were made, when we realized that we weren't the center of the universe, when people like Copernicus and Galileo came along and told us we weren't the center of the solar system anymore. And yeah, there was a really strong reaction against scientists like that by the powers that be. At the time, it would have been the Vatican, right? And the Catholic Church. And, you know, even Galileo was put under house arrest. And Copernicus was afraid to publish his books. He delayed the publication out of fear of this sort of reaction, right? Till he had passed on. The books were published posthumously. So there are times when we just have to take the deck of cards that were dealt, the hand that we're dealt, and deal with it. And I think we're going to all have to stand up and decide how we're going to react to the situation. Or we can be like ostriches, Dave, and just keep our heads in the sand and never evolve. I mean, what you're saying is correct. At the same time, we can't live that way forever. We have to deal with reality. I personally believe there are a lot of other species out there. I think they've been showing us that they're around for decades now. And I think it's not too long in the future that this type of disclosure, just because of the rate at which with which it's going right now, even this week, moving along, there are going to be people who are going to come forward who say they know it's true. I've talked to people like this who still haven't come into the public limelight, who've told me what they've seen in the basements of military bases, in labs, looking at recovered crash materials and so forth. I know these people are out there, and there are probably hundreds and thousands of them. And when those people feel like they can come forward without a lot of risk to themselves, perhaps violating NDAs that they signed and so forth, I think that'll cause a really large sea change in the amount of evidence that we're asked to consider. And I think we're going to have no choice but to deal with it. And I guess we're all going to find out how it turns out. I think it's very exciting. And I think it's the direction we have to go in one way or another. You know, I think it's just the nature of evolution, Dave.
Do you see any type of human cataclysm with this? Riots in the streets, panic, people all of a sudden, I look at people that there are people out there who have lists, man, where all of a sudden, the aliens are going to get us. So I might as well go do what I need to do before the aliens get me. This is the kind of thing that I'm concerned about, because it will play on the psyche of a lot of people.
It will, but I mean, I think we've survived challenges like that before in the United States and other countries. Here in the US, we survived a civil war. There was the civil rights movements in the 50s and 60s in this country. I know people that were involved in that who went down south to register African Americans to vote and so forth. And they were, they encountered a lot of violence from people that didn't want that to happen. But at the end of the day, we had more people voting than voted in the 1950s, so it moved forward, like it or not. But there's another aspect to it, Dave, which we have to consider. There's a multidimensional aspect to this, which is those that have some sort of contact with these entities might have the realization, a kind of an epiphany, that the universe is much, much bigger than we thought. And I think that sort of realization for a portion of the population that's ready for it could have a type of transformative effect on our consciousness to make us realize, Dave, that we're part of a larger galactic community. And I think realizing that we're part of a larger galactic community would in and of itself have a healing and evolutionary effect. It would have a positive effect just to realize that you belong to something bigger than you might have known existed. So I think there is a type of polarity going on here. You're right about that. But I think we also need to consider the positive impacts on our awareness, just to realize there's other beings out there. They want to interact with us and we could learn a lot from them. And it just opens up a whole new chapter in humanity's evolution. And I think that has to be counterbalanced against the kind of fundamentalists. I'm not sure, Dave, all the religions would react that way. I mean, I think in Islam, there's already a belief that there are multiple worlds. I mean, it does say, I believe, somewhere in their religious text that God was ruler of the worlds, plural. So I'm not sure all the religions, I'm not sure the Buddhists would react negatively, or the Taoists, but yeah, you would have that from some of the people, but we've survived that before. I mean, even in our country here, down here in the lower 48, I mean, women who were accused of being witches were executed and drowned in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. We've had that extreme, negative reaction, but we've somehow found a way to survive that. The witch burning in Europe in the Middle Ages and so forth. So yeah, it's a very complex and challenging question. And I would encourage anyone listening and viewing right now to really think about all of the implications for yourself. Because one way or another, Dave, we're coming up to this moment. I don't know exactly what the year is going to be. Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be 5 years from now? But I mean, it's coming down the road at some point, because there's a lot of evidence that we haven't seen yet, and it'll show us that this is real.
Now, I will say this. I do believe it's the younger generations, that I look at my children. My eldest daughter's 27. My youngest is 12. Okay. They are more open to any sort of change. They are more open to aliens being real and acceptance of it. We hear a lot about, these indigo children. A lot of kids are now indigo children that are being born in, where they're more spiritually advanced and accepting of the soul, of the human race, of life forms in general. I see that part of society being more accepted to all of a sudden it coming down about the president saying aliens are here. It's you and I would both be in that same category. It's that 40, 45 and up, where we're still looking at a lot of old school ways of thinking. Our way was better kind of thing, where we're not as accepting to change and to anything that could be coming, because it blocks or changes an entire lifetime of narrative.
Exactly right. That's very well put, Dave. Very well put. Yeah, we're the ones who are the problem, because the older folks like us were kind of set in our ways. And I guess I'd like to believe I'm not as set in my ways as much as other people who are less familiar with the topic, but I could be wrong. But yeah, all younger people are more open to it. Dave, there's a couple sides to this. I mean, there is this outside reaction, the political culture reaction, but there's also the psychological reaction of each person to your own mind and awareness. In other words, being in the presence of extraterrestrials or people with a sort of different biological, psychophysiological makeup could expose you to even portions of your own mind that you're not very familiar with. We all have very interesting and strange dreams at night sometimes, right? Where do those come from? So there's this possibility that being around these beings, let's say they're just at a different frequency than we are, could expose you to yourself in a way that you've never experienced before, right? And that in and of itself, let alone the outside reaction, there's a sort of physiological reaction to encountering new life forms like this that each and every person would have to deal with on their own. I've often felt that the benefit of learning remote viewing was that it exposed you to your own unknown in your own mind. You know, as Jules knows, someone who's taken my classes, any classes you take would do this. You're going into the unknown of your own awareness every time you sit down to do a session with a blank sheet of paper. You don't know what's going to happen, but that's a kind of a fear inoculation program because you get used to being with the unknown from yourself for 15 minutes, half an hour, and you realize it was a little weird, but it's okay. I'm done. I think that type of exercise, if people start doing something like that, it gets you used to it. It creates a type of tolerance for the unknown. I think Da Vinci had a name for this, Leonardo da Vinci. He called it sfumato. I think that's the name in Italian. It's called going into the mist, sfumato. There's something valuable for that if you practice it just a little bit every day, that there's a cumulative effect of being less afraid of new or unknown, strange things. And I think that'll be valuable when we encounter these beings at some point. So yeah, younger people don't have those barriers that older people do. And for those of us who are older, it's useful to practice getting used to uncertainty and a kind of gray zone without having to come to a conclusion logically, which is something that RV teaches, but any creative exercise teaches the same sort of thing. So yeah, I think we can all practice in our own way to get used to this moment, which I think for most of us, and I could be wrong, but I think it's coming in our lifetimes. I think if you're listening right now, you're going to experience this. And it'll certainly be one of the biggest changes that we've ever encountered in history. But we'll either deal with it and face up to it or we won't. That'll be a test, won't it?
Can we survive it? I know humans are very good at surviving all sorts of usually self-inflicted issues and problems that we face on this planet. But is this something we could survive not knowing what the intentions of these extraterrestrials here would be?
Yeah, we've survived really challenging things, and every day we survive the possibility of a nuclear war that could come out at any moment because of all these missiles that are set in all these different countries to go at each other, right? And we've survived that for decades without actually annihilating ourselves. So Dave, I could make the argument, I mean, just one answer, that we're more of a threat to ourselves than they would be. Because so far it doesn't seem like they've been intent on, wiping us out, despite the themes of many science fiction movies. But the question is, can we survive that type of chaos, mental chaos, confusion, socially, without society falling apart? And can we live through that type of transformation? Well, look, I think one thing is clear here. We won't be the same when we go through that transformation. We won't be the people we are now, but we're not the same people we were several years ago either. And we're still here and we're still okay. So we go through these changes every year, every day, really, without being conscious of it. We're always changing and evolving, but this would be definitely a big one. Dave, I think there's one aspect of it, though, that we would have to consider, and we have to deal with this intelligently. If anyone saw the Moment of Contact movie about the Varginha incident in Brazil in 1996, I mean, there was some bacterial contamination from one of these creatures to the firefighter who picked him up and grabbed him in his arms, and they took him to the hospital. And that according to the surgeons in the newer version of this movie that came out in January, Moment of Contact by James Fox. I don't know if you've had him on the show, but I mean, there is some physiological risks there of these interactions between species that no one understands. The surgeons told us it was a type of bacteria that they're familiar with, but it wasn't acting the same way it normally does on Earth. There was no way to treat it. So it was just virulent, like it had come from somewhere else. And that movie is a very good example, Dave, of how people in that little town of Varginha reacted to seeing these creatures around, those three girls and everything, and how mainly how the authorities repressed that information. And those witnesses are still here, which is why James Fox could just interview them recently and update the movie. They're all still there, but they were told to shut up. So it's a lot of different levels.
Radiation, Sim, you look at the radiation that was burnt onto Stefan Mikulik in the Falcon Lake incident.
Right.
And there's plenty of physical evidence to go along with that.
That's a physiological safety issue that has to be addressed. This also applies to new forms of fusion, cold fusion, and low energy nuclear reaction, where there's a danger of these types of radiation. And I think we can deal with that. But yeah, I mean, UFOs can potentially be harmful. I interviewed that guy, Gary, from Minot Air Force Base. He's on my YouTube channel, the missile security guard. His whole right side of the body and the other guy in the security alert truck, the whole truck was burned from some sort of ultraviolet radiation. So there's no doubt that there are risks to this interaction, which is all the more reason why we should be talking about it and find out what we need to do to prepare so that this sort of contact happens safely.
We got about 2.5 minutes to go before we have to go to break. At the top of the hour, Dr. Simeon Hein is our guest. Can we survive alien contact on this planet? Overall, because we are going to switch subjects in the next hour, talk some Bigfoot, especially the Patterson-Gimlin film. Overall, your final thoughts on whether or not humanity is ready for alien contact.
My thoughts are, ready or not, here they come. And we will adapt because we have resources and abilities we're not even aware of. And there's another aspect to it, Dave. If they do show up and, are more in open contact with us than they are now, they've probably done this before, and they're probably have ways of helping us overcome this sort of sense of panic or fear or anything like that. So I would imagine I will say we will survive it and we will grow. And that's the way it should be. I think we'll do fine with it. It won't necessarily be easy for everyone, but the evolution will happen in a way that I just think it's natural. I think that's how the universe works. Species eventually come in contact with other species and they become part of larger collective organizations and groupings. This seems to be how it works, and I think this is probably what's going to happen in this case. So do your homework now, and it'll be less scary later on.
And stock up on cans of Spam, just in
right.
case.
Yes, maybe. Yes,
build that dugout in the forest where nobody can find you unless you put out a chimney with a smoke signal. Get ready for the alien invasion of what's going to happen. No, I think that overall, I'm scared that I think there's going to be a lot of damage right up front, but humans are resilient and we're pretty smart. We're pretty able. We're pretty easy to survive. And I think overall we'll be able to do it.
And we've survived our own stupidity in the past too. If you look at all the dumb things we've done throughout history, we've survived that too. So, Yeah, I'm betting on human survival and in many cases improvement from this sort of uh, type of contact interaction and so forth. But Dave, we're all going to find out together. I don't know have all the answers to this. Nobody does, but we're all here together. We're going to find out how it's all going to lay out. So,
Isn't that the truth, my friend? Dr. Simeon Hein is here. And in the next hour, we are going to break down this latest controversy in the Bigfoot world. Oh, the gloves are off. It's a brawl at center ice in the Bigfoot world. Is the Patterson-Gimlin film a hoax? Well, we're going to get the opinion of Dr. Hein and more when we return. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, my friend, we got about 6 minutes.
great.
I'm going to put you in the background and I'll be right back,
We'll
okay?
see you in a moment.
There we go. Move my chair, people. Move my chair. All right, I am back. And let's see here. Dr. Hein is back as well. There we go. We got about a minute 45 before we go here. Great first hour. Went by really fast. Oob to Joe's Maine, you've got aliens and Bigfoot. Werewolf, how you doing? Griffins, how you doing? Don't forget, if you haven't already, give us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. It helps with our algorithms for the show. So thank you very, very much. And what else can I tell you? Oh, CaribouCon. Go to cariboucon.com. Get your VIP tickets now for September 18th through 20th. Yes, I'm inviting all of you to my beautiful area of British Columbia to watch Grant Cameron, the ladies from Beyond the Haunting. Merle will be here, Samantha Mowat, Jacob Rice, Brent Thomas from Paranormal Portal, R. Keith Andrews, and more. I'd love to have you here. Go to cariboucon.com. That's 2 O's, CaribouCon, cariboucon.com. Remember, if you're coming from the States, you're paying in Canadian dollars. So it's like $12 for you to attend. Well, maybe not that little, but it'll be good. Thank you to our super chatters tonight, Pam, Area 54, and JSCO. We graciously appreciate your support of Spaced Out Radio. Thank you very, very much. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check it on out. And finally, hit up my new YouTube channel, The Haunted 108, and give it a like. I'd appreciate it. We are into hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We have Dr. Simeon Hein hanging out with us. We're going to get into Bigfoot next because there's some controversy going around the Bigfoot world as we speak. But first, we want to say hello to all of you listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Sanibel. Sanibel is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Dr. Simeon Hein is here just off a Bigfoot conference in Washington, D.C., and during that weekend, there was a big dust-up in the Bigfoot world regarding the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. And in fact, it even made an article in People magazine calling the film an incredible hoax, says the director of a groundbreaking new documentary. Dr. Simeon Hein, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm going to read you this article from People, well, part of it, and then I want to get your opinion on it. It says, there's a new documentary capturing Bigfoot, which offers up some startling new revelations behind the story of Sasquatch, thanks to film footage locked away in a safe for decades. Documentary filmmaker Mark Evans had a hunch one day that he might tackle the topic of Bigfoot, but he had no idea that he'd end up creating a film that could end up debunking the mystery linked to the creature that's lasted 59 years. His groundbreaking documentary, Capturing Bigfoot, which premieres at the South by Southwest Film and TV Festival, provides startling new evidence, he says, that finally proves that the most famous Bigfoot film of all is nothing more than an incredible hoax. Long held up as evidence that Bigfoot exists and responsible for launching the multi-million-dollar Bigfoot industry, the iconic, shaky 59-second silent clip that was shot in 1967 shows an enormous hairy creature, later nicknamed Patty, walking slowly through a wooded area in a forest near Bluff Creek, California. It really captured the imagination of billions of people over the last 6 decades, says Evans. Shot by a former rodeo star named Roger Patterson and his pal Robert Gimlin, the Patterson-Gimlin film had for decades been scrutinized by biologists, anthropologists, and even Hollywood costume examiners looking to debunk the authenticity. Over the years, no one has been able to definitively prove that the 16 millimeter movie was staged. All that began in June 2024 when Evans, who has directed a handful of critically acclaimed documentaries, received an email from a part-time instructor named Teresa Brooks at Olympic College, where he teaches courses in documentary filmmaking. After her father's death, says Evans, she found a canister of 16 millimeter film that had been sealed away for over half a century. She needed help getting it developed and wondered if he might be interested, Evans, that is, in doing something with it. Little did Evans know what he had just been handed and its possible connection to the famed 1967 film. But he soon learned that Brooks' father, a man named Norm Johnson, who spent years running the film department at Seattle's Boeing Company, was connected to Patterson and Gimlin through his brother Dave. And it quickly became clear to Evans that Teresa's father had developed the Patterson-Gimlin film, which immediately made headlines around the world after the footage was released. It caught fire right away, Evans says, and somebody said in our film, it went viral before the word even existed. So realizing he had physical evidence that finally put to rest the question of whether Patterson's creation was a hoax, Evans knew that he had the makings for an explosive documentary. He quickly went to work, he says, connecting the dots behind the making of the 1967 film and interviewing the cast of characters in Patterson's hometown of Yakima, Washington, who were involved with its creation, including 80-something-year-old Bob Hieronymus. I apologize if I got that wrong, Hieronymus, who confessed to being the individual wearing the fake Bigfoot suit in the film. Evans, whose father had grew up in Yakima and had heard plenty of gossip among locals about its film's authenticity, assumed that the family of Roger Patterson, who died of Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1972, would, as they always had, refuse to speak about the film, which had generated millions of dollars in licensing fees over the years. What makes the story even more complicated and tragic, says Evans, is that Patterson, who by all accounts truly believed in Bigfoot's existence, knew that he was dying in 1967 when he made the release of the film. He knew he didn't have long and that he was going to be leaving his wife and 3 young kids to take care of, Evans said, so he took a shot at leaving them some sort of legacy that could possibly help pay the bills. So it goes on to explain it a little bit more, but nothing really in depth about the 40-second clip. Oh, pardon me. Let me get to this. Not long after receiving Brooks's email, Evans had the 16 millimeter film developed. Days later, he found himself looking at a 40-second clip set in a location similar to the one in the movie and showing what appeared to be slightly skinnier looking Bigfoot walking into the woods. It maybe took me 9 months to realize what we had. Who Evans says was able to determine by markings on the film that the footage had been shot in 1996, roughly a year before the now famous clip in the 59-second Bigfoot movie. What we eventually found out was that this new footage represented a trial run, a rehearsal that was never discarded. Your thoughts?
Well, it's, I started seeing this on the plane coming back tonight from DC. I haven't seen the documentary. So I can't really comment on it too much, but I would say in the history of science, these types of events can actually open people's minds to the reality of the phenomena. In other words, I don't know whether this actually is this, these charges, this story is true or not. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But for a lot of people, the Patterson-Gimlin film opened up a lot of minds, and it actually describes what a lot of people have seen out in the woods. I've talked to so many people who've seen Bigfoot, Sasquatch now, and they will often use the Patterson-Gimlin film, Dave, as a reference to how much it looked like Patty or not. And in a lot of cases, it didn't look like that Patty type creature. It had very different features, a much brighter hair, and so forth. So whether it is or it isn't actually a real film or not, I'm more inclined to believe it is real just from having talked to Bob Gimlin myself about it once. But even if I'm wrong, I mean, the phenomena itself is real, and it describes what a lot of people have seen. And this raises a lot of interesting issues, because there is this label in parapsychology. Have you heard of this, called mixed mediumship?
Mixed
And
mediumship. No, I have
yeah,
not.
this is a fascinating concept that was new to me. I learned about it at one of the SSE meetings a number of years ago. These are actually real psychics who occasionally fake what they're doing because they may be having an off day, but they're asked to perform. So they really do what they say they're doing, but maybe some of what they do is not always real. But when it's not real, it doesn't invalidate the times that it is real. And this is sort of what this reminds me of, is even if you have people faking a couple UFOs here or there, it doesn't mean the whole phenomena isn't real. Even if you have accusations against people like Uri Geller, that the PK, the spoon bending, that there's some explanation for that, it doesn't invalidate the fact that psychokinesis is a real phenomena. So I think if this were to turn out to be true, and I'd really have to, see this film for myself and look at the evidence and so forth, it still opened people's minds up to the reality of the phenomena, and perhaps allowed them to actually experience this in reality for themselves, just like we learned from mixed mediumship. So I think it's really good to have discussions like this. If it turned out to be true, I'd be really surprised, just because in the analysis of the costume, Dave, it's an extremely detailed, anatomically correct costume. It's a female Bigfoot there with breasts, which, according to people at Disney, when they asked them if they could make costumes like that, they said, we would make a male version. It would be so much more expensive to make a female version of that type of costume. We don't see any zippers on the back. We put our zippers on the back. So if this were true, it would mean that Patterson and Gimlin were better than the expert costume makers in Hollywood. I would really be surprised if that were true, but I'm always open to evidence. So
Here's my point too on that. And I think we look at this with a 2026 mind and not a 1967 mind. And I'm going to focus on the breasts here for a second, because that in 1967, society was still very, very conservative with clothing, especially with women. They still had people going around measuring bathing suits to make sure they weren't more than 1 inch above the knee. It was a very conservative clothing society. Free love hadn't begun yet in the 60s flower power movement, and when you get people like this, I just don't see them saying at that time in a 1967 mind frame, hey, let's make a costume, but let's play a joke on everybody and let's sew a pair of boobs on this thing. It just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. And one of the things I saw at the Oak Ridge Bigfoot Festival last year was a really upscaled 4K version of the Patterson Gimlin film, where you can see it in really, really great detail. And even at that upscaled resolution, there were no signs of seams or zippers or anything. How would someone like that have long arms that go down to their knees, that sort of length? Plus, from what I've seen in various documentaries, that particular gait that Patty has is not a gait that a human can reproduce. They found someone who was this, very tall athlete, tried to get this person to walk exactly like you see Patty in the film, and he couldn't do it. He could not do it the way the leg is lifted up at that certain height, the way it goes back and so forth. So I've seen a lot of evidence to the contrary, but I think we have to remember that even if there are cases here and there of people hoaxing these things, I will tell you, I have been wrong in the past. When I first started studying crop circles, I was convinced from all the arguments that there was no blipping way humans could make crop circles. If you saw some of my early presentations from the 90s on this subject, I would get up there on stage and say, you know, I've looked at the evidence and here's all the reasons I don't think humans could ever come close to making these complex patterns. And I was wrong. Humans could do it because I went out with them at night. I've talked about this. I wrote about it in Opening Minds. They could do it. I saw it done multiple times. These people had a lot more skill than I originally thought. They weren't really hoaxers because they believed in this natural magic that they were creating through shapes and geometry and resonance and so forth. So I wouldn't call them hoaxers, but they were capable of going out there in 4 or 5 hours and making very complex patterns. I know because I was with them many times. So I've been wrong in the past, but regardless of whether that's true or not, it didn't invalidate the witnesses who I've written about in Black Swan Ghosts who've actually seen craft flatten meadows in large scale, people out of the Tully saucer nest and so forth. So one case here or there of people imitating the real thing doesn't invalidate the real thing. And let me give you an example of that. I got to know a former Secretary of Defense in the U.S. who was a Secretary of Defense in the 80s. And he told me at an RV conference, and I finally got permission to share this story. He didn't want me to ever talk about it again, but this is the story. He told me there were 30 people in one of the intelligence agencies monitoring a Soviet PK test, PK being psychokinesis. In this particular test, a psychic was 1,000 miles away from Moscow. The spoon was in Moscow, and they wanted to see if this particular psychic, I don't know who it was, the Soviets had a whole bunch of them, could bend a spoon at 1,000 miles. And he said they were listening into this experiment. And so I said, and what happened? Did the spoon bend on command? He goes, yes, it bent on command. And until this day, there were only 30 people that knew about it. And now you're one more. So now 31 people know about it. I said, well, how come you never shared this? I mean, wouldn't this make an amazing news headline? You know, US government has proof positive that PK is actually real. He goes, we had to protect sources, methods, and it was more important to protect the sources and methods of how they monitored this particular event than it was for the American public to know that PK has been proven to be real. So even if there are people here and there that found a way, I don't know how they do it, to bend a spoon, and they weren't really bending it from chi power or anything like that. They were just kind of using some sort of trick. It doesn't invalidate the fact that PK is real, and the federal government knows it's real.
Looking at Sasquatch, I know the one that I saw walk away from me back in 2013. It was massive. I did not get a look at the legs. I got a right profile and a back profile. What amazed me about that creature being about 70 feet away was the size of its shoulders. And just like the Patty in the Patterson-Gimlin film, there was no neck. It was just a giant head with a conical shaped head. It never turned to look at me. I never saw the face, but just the absolute sheer size of it and the way it moved and the hair that moved, like I could see it right now as I'm describing it to you. I mean, a lot of people see that. They have these close encounters with this giant of a mystery, and they can't see a neck. They can't see arms. The way it walks, like in the Patterson-Gimlin film, where they've done studies and tests about the way the muscles move in the legs underneath.
Right.
I mean, you would need a bodybuilder's leg, you know, like somebody like Brian Shaw or, you know, one of the world's strongest men's size legs in order to get that sort of tone and that stride, Simeon.
Right, exactly. In the case of crop circles, I asked these circle makers to prove to me they could do it, and they did. But in the case of Patty, I haven't seen anyone come anywhere close to reproducing that muscle movement you can see in the legs and on the thighs and so forth. If the people that created this film believe that that's true, can they give us a demonstration of something that looks like exactly like Patty in that film right now? That would convince me that they're right. But I have never seen anything that ever comes anywhere close to the way Patty walks, the muscle movement, the arms, the length of the arms, and so forth. And another thing is, Dave, you've seen Sasquatch that looks like Patty, but I've talked to people where they said it didn't look like Patty. It had a very different characteristic on the face, looked much more like a human than ape-like and so forth. And there's so many varieties of the way Sasquatch looks. And some of these people are people that are friends of mine. They were so frightened by these encounters. These are multiple people I know. I just talked to one last night about his encounter again. They didn't want to go back out in the woods for at least a year. They were afraid even to go to parks. That's how the impact these sightings made on them. So one case here, if Patty is really a hoax, like they say, I would really need to see someone right now reproduce that walk, that look, that muscle movement in a convincing outfit with 16 millimeter film that looked like that. And so far, I haven't seen that. So I'm open to the evidence. I just haven't seen the evidence to convince me that that argument is correct. Whether Bob, Patterson attempted to create something like that, that would almost be kind of an example of mixed mediumship. I mean, it wouldn't completely invalidate the sighting. Because here's the question. I haven't seen the film. Does that film that they found so allegedly in the vault, does it look like Patty walking there or not? What do people say? Does it look like it?
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. There's still a lot of reviews. Like I said, this is just brand new from this weekend.
Yeah, it's still too new. I would say the weight of evidence going back to Native American counters, going all the way back to the Vikings, according to Dave Pilates, completely outweighs this claim that this started some sort of industry. From my knowledge, neither Patterson nor Gimlin made any money off of this film. And I think that invalidates the claim right there. Did they make any money from this film? No, they made nothing. And these guys were so poor. Gimlin had to hitchhike back to Yakima from Bluff Creek. Okay. And yet they were able to construct a suit that even Disney costume makers say they can't do. I mean, I guess there's always this possibility. I'd really need to see some strong evidence in that favor, but it certainly wouldn't change my mind about Bigfoot overall. I know Sasquatch is real. I haven't seen Sasquatch, Dave. I did do something in the Blue Mountains with Barb Shoop last summer, and something did run by my tent very quickly that was bipedal at 3 a.m. And you're pretty groggy at 3 a.m. And I was wondering, who's out there besides my tent? And they told me that is the sort of thing, that's how it starts. Maybe that's I haven't seen this myself directly, but I've talked to enough people who have, so it really wouldn't have one impact one way or another.
Well, one of the things is we got about a minute to go here before we have to go to break, that this is kind of stirred up is automatically all the skeptics are jumping out of the woodwork. See, we told you Bigfoot wasn't real. Your famed footage shows that it was not real. And I think a lot of people are taking, well, if Patterson Gimlin is fake, well, that proves right there that Bigfoot does not exist. So what are we doing here? I mean, there's always that extreme portion there. So we got about 45 seconds.
Well, yeah, back in the 1920s, there was something called the Piltdown hoax. Do you remember that? Where someone combined, I think it was the skull of an ape with the torso of another human or something like this. And they claimed it was another species. But there were a lot of different types of species of humans found since then. One has been found recently called Homo floresiensis, and then recently we've learned about the Denisovians in Asia. So just because someone did deliberately create something that didn't turn out to be real in the 1920s doesn't mean that we still haven't found new species of hominids that are relatives of humans. So I don't think that argument really would wash. Just one film, one way or another, doesn't matter. What about the Paul Freeman film taken in the Blue Mountains?
Right.
You've seen that one, right? Same
Paul
sort of thing.
Freeman.
Doesn't look quite like Daddy, but it's a huge creature walking through the bush. No one thinks Paul Freeman faked that one. So
Hold that thought. We're going to go to break here. We have Dr. Simeon Hein on Bigfoot coming up.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, my friend, we are clear. It's such an interesting topic. I mean, I look at what I've found, and I'm an amateur, Simeon. I am a total amateur. And I've looked at what I've found in my two areas that I go to, and I feel like a kid in a candy store, man. When all of a sudden you come across like a 15, 16-inch footprint, or when the one time I remember, like in 2024, we left our camp. We were gone for about 20 minutes. We came back. We're in the middle of the forest. There's nobody around, Simeon, and we come back to our camp after about 20 minutes, and there's a footprint 10 feet from our tent. Right? I mean, this is stuff that boggles you. It scares you. It intrigues you. It makes you fascinated.
it absolutely does. And this goes back to your first question of the night, Dave. This is freaking amazing. And I will tell you, whatever comes from this film about Patterson Gimlin, it'll just be really good for looking at all the evidence that these journalists haven't wanted to look at. Because we all have a lot of evidence about this, and I would love to talk about it and show the exhibits, the footprints, the casts, the hydrocal or the plaster casts, the hair samples, right? There is a new film coming out from the Flashy Beauty people about the Sierra Sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? Ron Moorhead, the Johnson brothers,
Oh, yeah.
Before them in the 50s. This went on for decades, these Sierra Sounds. They brought up skeptics to try to debunk it. Ron Moorhead wanted it to be some sort of hoax or something. He brought up Al Berry, who had scientific training, was a journalist. And Al Berry said, this is the real thing. And they got all those tape recordings. And in this film, they're having them analyzed, these Sierra Sounds. And to make those sounds, you would have to have two sets of vocal cords. There isn't any way for a human to make those sounds. So I think anything in this area just has a positive effect of having us look at more evidence. The Sierra Sounds could use you could spend so much time just looking at all those weird kind of chitter chatter conversations, the reverse samurai speech. There's just so much evidence that hasn't been looked at, that one thing like this, a good documentary, even if it's attempting to debunk it, or one particular film, would just have a better effect of, well, look, what other evidence is there, whatever. I would like to see them debunk the Sierra Sounds, because Al Berry wanted to, and he couldn't do it. And he was up there. He was up there in that hunting cabin. So
we had at our one spot in 2018 at Flight 21, we had the samurai chatter.
You did
40 yards in front of us.
You've
Like,
heard it?
Hearing it. And the thing is, I didn't put two and two together until about 8 months later, when I re-listened to the Sierra Sounds, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's what we heard. That is exactly what we heard. And I'll tell you, I've never, like, my entire body froze, when I was sitting here listening to the Sierra Sounds again about it. And I'll tell you, these sounds are incredible when you hear them. I've heard whoops. I've heard Ric Flair's brother in the forest going, woo, after our sighting in 2022 that we had. Right? I mean, we've heard a number of things.
Did it sound like that back and forth, like in the Sierra Sounds, really rapid?
No, it was like direct at us. It was like
Right at you, yeah.
Right.
So Scott Nelson, who's analyzed the Sierra Sounds, he used to work for the Navy in linguistics and cryptography and all this. I saw him give a presentation up in Kalispell at Dave Paulides' conference a couple of years ago. And he said he's familiar with all human languages. He's a linguistic expert, worked for the Navy in intel and everything. He said humans do not have the ability to make Sasquatch sounds. You would have to have an ability the way we speak on the exhale. They're able to speak on the inhale.
Hold that thought. We're coming back in 3 seconds. We are into the second half of Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Dr. Simeon Hein is here. We're talking Bigfoot, Patterson-Gimlin film. Is it real or is it Memorex? We don't know, but there's many who believe now, after a documentary coming out at the South by Southwest Documentary and TV Festival, that capturing Bigfoot means that it might be a hoax. Now, you're not buying that. I'm not buying that. And there's a lot of scientific study that has gone into this, Simeon, that states that Bigfoot is out there.
Yeah, right. During the break, we were talking about the linguistic evidence, the chattering, reverse samurai sounds that so many people have heard. And even, these experts like Scott Nelson say you have to be able to make those sounds breathing in and breathing out, which something, no human could do. So again, I haven't seen the film, so I can't really comment on it directly, but you know what it reminds me of, Dave? The Wright brothers. There's an excellent book that I read the whole way through, David McCulloch's book on the Wright brothers. Do you know that the same arguments were made against the Wright brothers, which is why they chose to leave the United States and do their first public flights in France? Because there was so much hostility to this idea of manned flight. All the journalists said that it had to be a hoax. There was the famous headline, Wright brothers, flyers or liars. This is always the knee-jerk reaction to new discoveries, is to say that it was a hoax. Thomas Edison, when he demonstrated the phonograph, what did people say? It was journalists, that he was a ventriloquist, that there was no phonograph. Well, guys, it turns out that records and record players turns out to be real, just like airplanes. I flew on a couple today. I'm telling you, airplanes are real. But our minds are limited by the belief systems generally, as you were saying earlier about young people and old people. Our older minds are limited by these belief systems we grew up in from authority figures in school and all this. So by the time we reach our 20s, we get really set in our ways. And my experience with people that look at these types of phenomena, whether it's Bigfoot or PK or RV, is that they generally don't want to look at the evidence. They want to take one little case where they can show maybe there was some fraud or something that they can disprove, and they won't want to look at the whole gamut of evidence. And I think that's what we have going on in this case. Again, haven't seen it yet, but how would you explain all the other videos that show something like Patty or what you've seen yourself with your own eyes? So those types of critiques, I think in the long run don't matter personally, because the weight of the evidence shows that these phenomena are real. I remember hearing a lecture by Marcello Truzzi at the first remote viewing conference in Mescalero, New Mexico in 1999, before IRVA, the Remote Viewing Association, International Remote Viewing Association, even existed. And Truzzi was the guy that created CSICOPS, Committee for Claims Against the Paranormal, right? Which later attracted Martin Gardner and the amazing Randy and all the skeptics. And you know what Truzzi told us? He was sorry he ever created CSICOPS. He goes, because they weren't skeptics in the true sense of people that are willing to be open to evidence. He said they were just scoffers. They didn't want to see the evidence. They would love this particular film because that's what they believed the whole time. So that type of, commentary, scoffing type of commentary in the long run, in my mind, doesn't matter so much because they're not looking at the real evidence. They're not looking at the reality of these phenomena over a large scale, over many tests or experiments, or in this case, a Bigfoot, thousands and thousands of people's experiences with this, hundreds of thousands probably over the entire globe. So in the long run, if people want to talk about evidence, I say bring it on, because we've got a lot of evidence. I would like to see how they deal with all of these types of witness testimony that I've listened to. So in any case, that's my reaction to it. I think the analysis of the evidence is always a good thing, but let's look at all the evidence, not just one person's interpretation of one film and what was found in some vault somewhere. It doesn't really matter to the reality of the phenomena, in my view.
We also have to remember too that most of the skeptics who have, virtually poo-pooed anything to do with Sasquatch, the likelihood of them being people who have actually walked into a forest is very low. The percentage is very low. They haven't investigated it. They've done their internet sleuthing rather than what it's like to be out in the middle of the forest and come across these amazing footprints, or come across hair samples or scat samples, or even have an encounter with one of these. The chances of you seeing one are very slim, but when they are in your area, they let you know that they are there. And I don't think a lot of these so-called skeptical people have put themselves in a position, from their concrete jungle or their suburban jungle to actually go into the jungles of North America or around the world to see this creature and put themselves in harm's way.
No, that's absolutely right. I find that a lot of the academic treatments of these subjects are people that have stayed within their ivory towers and actually have never gone out to the woods to look at footprints or tree structures or listen to the vocalizations. They're very confident that and this pertains, Dave, to a lot of subjects that we kind of put under this rubric of calling it, whatever, paranormal, supernatural, whatever, is that the people that claim to really know the ultimate explanation for this, who think they can explain it away, actually haven't looked at the evidence. They're too they seem almost too lazy to want to look at the real evidence, talk to real witnesses, and so forth. So yeah, you've got to go out there, you've got to look at the evidence, and you've got to see what other people are seeing. It's very easy to dismiss these topics. And I have to say, to the people I talked to in Washington, D.C. just last weekend, we got those types of questions that is typical of people that have never really looked into these topics, but their opinions are coming from, local sources, the newspapers that we're all familiar with. And that's all they've really ever encountered about these topics, Dave, is what other people have said about it. Other journalists, they haven't actually talked to witnesses. And so we got those types of questions. If this is real, how come we don't hear about it more often? Well, that's the nature of hidden events and people being afraid of ridicule, stigma. And the giggle factor is they're not going to voluntarily share their experiences if they feel they're going to be laughed out of the room. So it takes a certain mindset, as Marcello Truzzi pointed out to us, to actually want to look. It's not just the evidence, Dave, as you know. It's a willingness to want to look at the evidence. And it's often easier for people. And I don't know the producer of this film. I'd like to see what if he's an open-minded person or if he was just had an agenda to begin with. You know, it takes a willingness to want to look at evidence. And I think those of us who consider ourselves to be modern people, we consider ourselves to be evidence-based people. We're willing to change our minds based on what we actually see. So I'd like to see if a lot of these skeptics are actually really skeptics, or are they scoffers, you know? And I've encountered a lot of scoffers, and it's, as a sociologist, it's always fascinating because it always makes me think of all these other topics like electromagnetism. Do you know what they said about James Clerk Maxwell, even going back to Faraday? Airy-fairy metaphysicians. It was just considered to be metaphysics. Yeah, all this technology that we use, the computers, internet, the way where you and I are communicating right now, and the viewers right now watching this, and that's all because we were able to understand electromagnetism and get it under some control. But at the time, and Jules and I often talk about this, at the time this was discovered in the 1800s, people just thought it was like Bigfoot. It's just fantasy. Where's the evidence, you know? So these things can take a while to sink in, but the history of science shows us that the mainstream often gets it wrong. They get it wrong.
Let's get to a couple of audience questions here for you.
Please, let's do it.
Jaquetta is asking, it's been said octopus are not of this planet, and some folks love calamari. So do you think ET might have second thoughts?
Yes, they might. You know, that is exactly what I was saying earlier on, Dave. Maybe they're already here and they're octopus or some, you know, dolphin. Some people think dolphins are a type of ET. Look how smart they are. Maybe they're already here in some form and we're not perceiving them as they really are. We just think they're ordinary animals and there's something, they come from somewhere else. We don't really know. But that could be one of the outcomes of this, is some of the familiar creatures around could have some sort of extraterrestrial origin. Maybe even we do.
All right, next question comes from JSCO. Dr. Hein, is there any recent UFO evidence that you are really impressed by?
Recent evidence, you mean in terms of films and photos? It's getting more challenging that way, as you all know, because of the way that AI can just doctor photos and so forth. So we all saw that Jake Barber footage of that kind of, what is that, night vision greenlit egg being lifted up by some sort of cable. I mean, I saw that too. I'm not sure what that is. That was claimed to be some sort of recovery operation. I think the most amazing thing is that within the span of a week, we had a former president and our current president say that this is a real subject. And one of them even says he's issuing a directive, our current president, to that there should be a declassification. We'll see if this actually happens. So I think that's actually the most impressive thing. But if I think of any evidence, I'll let Dave know. Might come to me after the show.
All right. While we're waiting for more questions, in light of the cryptid world of Bigfoot, what do you think it is? Do you think it is flesh and blood, or do you think there might be something a little bit more magical to it, maybe combines the flesh and blood with a little bit of supernatural ability?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dave, because you know what people say, they often ask the question to me and other people, you hear this in podcast interviews, are there several types of Sasquatch, some of whom are more flesh and blood and some of whom are more supernatural or magical? My take on it is that this is a hominid species that's been around a long time and never relied on technology the way we developed it for whatever reason over the past several thousand years, whether it was ET intervention or something else, the reason that we're so technologically oriented, right? And the Sasquatch stayed a lot more connected to nature, and they were able to develop resonance-based behaviors and technologies which allow them to do cloaking and energy projection and this kind of telepathic mind speak and so forth. So I would say, Dave, my view of it, having looked at all the evidence and really reading a lot about this, is that these creatures are in some ways more advanced than we are in terms of their ability to harness resonance and use whatever it is, whether it's charge clusters that they're able to develop from walking on the ground with all this fine types of hairs that they have. It's not fur, they have this very fine hair. They're able to develop charge clusters, which are the basis of exotic vacuum objects, microball lightning, and all of the phenomena that go along with that. Whether it's through that charge cluster concentration, just like static, we're talking about kind of static buildup that they were able to turn into kind of a vortex type structure, again, microball lightning, or some sort of sound-based technology, Dave. Cavitation, I'm thinking about cavitation, which leads to the same sort of microball lightning effect, the work of Takeaki Matsumoto in Japan and others here in the US, Mark Leclerc, who've shown that you can use sound, really high frequency sound, to generate this kind of nucleonic transformation. Those are natural technologies. I think Sasquatch, Dave, is able to create a natural technological effect that to us looks like magic, but to them is just second nature. And you and I, unfortunately, have become so disconnected from nature that when we look at it, we think it's magic, but it's actually how nature works. I was able to visit the Smithsonian National Zoo just yesterday, and I learned something new. That when Alessandro Volta invented the battery pile in 1799, he was basing it on the structure of electric eels. They knew that eels had segmented bodies, each segment of which acted like a battery. And that first battery that Volta, where Volt comes from, the pile that he created, the vertical pile a couple feet high, was based on the body of an electrical eel. So a lot of what we consider to be technology is already being used by nature. And that's how I think Sasquatch does it. So to answer your question, Dave, in my typical kind of longer-winded way, they are flesh and blood, but they know how to create a type of resonance with their bodies that you and I haven't quite figured out yet. That's my view of it.
And they are the masters of camouflage. We cannot forget that. I mean, unless you've spent time in the forest, and I don't want to make this sound like I'm down talking to anybody here, but this is something that I've learned because I grew up in a city. I've never been a hunting guy or an outdoors person or a hiker or anything like that. But when you go out with your newfound buddies, when you move to a small town like I did, you start spending time in the forest. You're thinking, oh man, I'm going to see deer all over the place. I'm going to see bears. I'm going to see moose. I'm going to see all sorts of wildlife out here. And you don't, because you realize quite quickly how camouflaged they are within the wilderness. I mean, it's like in India where you would think an orange tiger would stand out in a green forest. And yet it blends right in, Simeon.
It blends right in. Yeah. And the Sasquatch, having been out there their whole lives, never having kind of created cities or automobiles or anything like that, they haven't lost that ability. But it's something that we all kind of can regain again. During COVID, I spent a lot of time, since everything was shut down here in Boulder, I spent a lot of time camping in the Northwest. I camped up there for about 6 months. And what I found was those animals that you're talking about, after a period of weeks, will begin to see you as another animal. And they'll come closer and closer and closer into your camping area till the chipmunks are coming right up your arm. The rabbits are coming up right to chew on your shoelaces, and the deer and the moose come just right in front of you, like you're not a threat or anything, because they've gotten used to you and you're kind of matching their kind of vibe a little more. And all of a sudden you kind of meet in the middle. Really interesting. But it takes a couple of weeks for it to happen. So I don't know if you've had that experience, but as a city kid, I'm originally from New York City. This is something you don't see it originally, and they start coming closer, right? So they have a lot of abilities, but they have to want to interact also with you. They have to want to interact with you.
You're absolutely right. Probably the biggest thing that I have learned in chasing down Bigfoot as an enthusiast, because I still refuse to call myself a researcher because I don't know the first thing about research. Okay. I will say that the biggest thing that I have learned is doing everything the same. When we go week after week into our Sasquatch area, we park in the same spot. We try and take the same vehicles, try and wear similar clothing than what we wore the week before. If we have a fire pit, the fire pit is in the exact same spot. We set up our lawn chairs in the exact same spot. And the first few times, you just sit there and do nothing. Allow them to get your scent. Allow them to get a look at you, what you're doing, what your vehicle sounds like, absolutely everything. And I will say, by the time we ended last year at our research spot, it didn't take long for the interactions. We didn't have any sightings. Well, I didn't, at least. Tim, my research partner, did. We didn't catch it on film, unfortunately. But we did everything the same. And they seemed to like that. They seemed to be able to understand that we weren't there to harm them. We weren't there to break into their territory. We weren't there to reconstruct what they have. We were guests in their area. We weren't trying to take it over. And we just continued that pattern. And I've heard a lot more people who are now doing that because they realize that Sasquatch really is like a house cat. Its curiosity will get the better of it. It has to come see what you're doing. Have you heard that as well?
Absolutely. Yes. When I've talked to people up in the Northwest, that's the way they describe it. It's like a habituation. Some people, sometimes there's a gifting exchange, whatever it is they start leaving things out for the Sasquatch, little puzzles or fruit or something. And eventually it takes a while. The Sasquatch see them as some sort of co-equal or something. Like there's this barter relationship, which is, what a lot of the Northwest Coast Indians had. I'm told some of them still have it to this day, where they had this barter relationship with the Sasquatch, salmon for medicinal herbs or something like that. But I've heard people of having this now. And yeah, they've described it to me, but they don't want a lot of attention on it. They feel like it's a very special relationship with these forest dwellers. So they really don't want you coming around trying to prove it, take photos and everything. But yeah, I've heard this from a number of people, and it takes a while. Eventually the Sasquatch become something you got to get used to having around. Some people say they like having them around. It's something comforting about it, So yeah, it can happen with them too. But it's something about that realization that the Sasquatch, that you're not going to harm them, you're not trying to take pictures of them or anything like that. So
That's very true. That's very true. And like with us, we're in our couple of spots. It's amazing how close they get, and then they start playing games with you, Simeon. It's like last year, the last time Tim and I went out there, it was like we were playing hide and go seek with them.
Yeah, right? I've heard this, Dave. I've heard the same thing from other people. Heard the same thing.
Yeah. And it's fun. And then all of a sudden, after about 20, 30 minutes, you'll get this like telepathic message that says, okay, guys, it's time for you to go back to your vehicle. You can hang out in your little camp there, but this area here, this is ours now. You go back to your spot. We're gonna be in our area, and just thank you for the fun, but it's time for you to go. And you just acknowledge it, and you say thank you, and you go with it. And that's what we've been doing. Now, whether or not that's actually happening or not, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher. I'm a guy who's enthused by this, but I like to believe that we are getting those telepathic messages because, well, we've come out safe every time.
A lot of people have reported that type of telepathic contact. So even Les Stroud from your country, who produces a lot of films, right?
Yes.
Survivor Man described this when he went to investigate, like what you're saying. This woman said that I've got Sasquatch on my property. Les said that he couldn't believe what was happening. He had telepathic messages in his mind. It was sufficient for him to want to go see a psychiatrist afterwards. But you often hear the same thing. People think, am I cracking up? It happened to Les Stroud, Survivorman.
Simeon Hein, everybody. Dr. Simeon Hein,
thank you,
thank
guys.
you for a great show tonight. Coming up next, Swamp Dweller and UFO Max Grant Baker will be here for hour 3.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
Sim, thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you, Dave. I got to tell you one funny episode I heard up in Idaho. This woman said she kept getting this telepathic message that she should plant more fruit. And then one day before they were going to harvest it, all the fruit was gone from that night. They took it all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. Have a good night, my
Okay,
friend.
take care, Dave. We'll see you later.
Sleep.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Simeon Hein, everybody. I'll be right back. Okay. Back. Let's bring in the Max himself. There he is, little Granty Baker.
What's going on, brother?
Living the dream, bro. Living the dream.
Hey, I finally got some cool bootage.
Look at that.
Yeah, man.
Look at, show us that knee again. That's an impressive knee.
That knee is atrophied like you wouldn't believe. A whole leg. Ugh,
Right?
it happens.
All right. Andromedan, how you doing? Nice to see you. Honest Content, nice to have you here. Jacques Valet, I saw you somewhere. All right. Thank you to our super chatters tonight, Pam, Area 54, and JSCO. Thank you, everybody who is currently signing up as a subscriber to our Haunted 108 channel. I greatly appreciate that. We're up to 44. Wow. I'm excited. It excites me. I'm sorry. It excites me. So thank you very, very much. We're coming back in like 10 seconds. Swamp Dweller will be about just under 3 minutes, my friend.
Perfect.
Hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us as we prepare for Swamp Dweller and Grant Baker in the UFO Report coming on up. But first, we want to say hello to all of you tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Well, it is Sanibel. Sanibel is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. I'm a 16-year-old male, and this story takes place when I was about 13 years old or so. Me and a friend, let's just call her Ashley. Ashley was an avid hunter, and most times she went hunting with her family. She would invite me. My mom would never let me go, but after months of asking, she finally let up. The place we went to would be a wooded area with very little light. Before I continue, I feel it would be crucial to mention her brother was coming with us as well. Continuing on, when we got there, we started gathering wood for the fire for later. Ashley, her brother, and I went to go gather it. We start looking for wood, but we soon realized there was a terrible stench that filled the air. It smells like rotting meat and garbage. We ignored the smell, thinking it was just a deer or some other wildlife. We kept going. We had gathered enough wood, so we headed back. As we turned around to head back, we hear a scream. It sounded like a young girl, but it also sounded off. I can describe it, just not right. Ashley wanted to know what it was, but I just ushered her to keep going on and told her to just ignore it. By the time we got back, it was starting to get dark outside. As soon as we placed all the firewood, we started the fire. We just kind of sat there talking. Ashley, her brother, and I brought up the story of what happened to us earlier in the woods when we were looking for firewood. Her parents told us that we could have had a run-in with a Wendigo or a skinwalker, but we did not believe in that sort of stuff. As soon as we finished the campfire and s'mores and all that type of fun stuff, we headed off to bed. Me and Ashley stayed in the same tent, and after a while, trying to sleep. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go for a short walk around the little campsite we were staying at. While I was taking this walk, I noticed that there were little footprints around. They looked to be bigger than a deer's, but were too small to be anything else. I decided to start heading back to the tent, but no sooner than I did that, I heard that same blood-curdling scream of a little girl again. This time it seemed closer, and for some reason, sounded aggravated. I looked around, but I saw nothing. I pulled out my flashlight and shined it over to the trees. I wish I had not done that. I saw something I've never seen in my life. This terrifying, 8-foot-tall creature staring back at me. Looking back at this now, I'm almost positive what I saw was a Wendigo or a skinwalker. Just like her parents said, and typing this out now, it's all coming straight back to my mind now. I really just didn't know what to do in that moment, so I ran off, hid in the tent, and luckily didn't hear or see anything else. I'm not sure what that thing wanted, if it was hunting me, trying to lure me out, or if it was just trying to scare us.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another spooky story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, hit Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe. Thousands of stories for you to listen to all the time, all day, all night. It's a lot of fun, just like listening to this show. Time for the UFO report.
Staring at the stars tonight, signal shining in the sky. Grant's got the stories breaking through. What's hidden now comes into view. From distant lights to secret files, mystery stretched for miles and miles. Latest news, the truth revealed. Every signal slowly peeled. So tune in close, don't miss the facts. UFO Max, we've got your back. Spaced Out Radio, all night long, where the unknown becomes a song.
All right, we have Grant Baker coming on in, and it's always good to have you here with the latest and greatest in the UFO news. How you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me, my friend.
Oh, man, I'll tell you, I have tinnitus in my ears,
Oh, no.
and I've had it for years. I blame working in radio and wearing headphones, and that is probably the reason why I don't wear headphones very often. And I'll tell you, my tinnitus is so loud tonight. So loud. And that's all I hear is the ringing right now. And I'm just like, oh, I just want to go to bed and, sleep it off and let it relax for a little bit. That's for sure. Man, if you suffer from tinnitus, let me know, how do you deal with it? Because I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It's brutal.
I'm sorry to hear that. The only time I ever get it is that just random, weird, ear-piercing ring in one ear, and it happens for about 10 seconds and then goes away. And I used to tell my parents that, and they're, oh, just someone's thinking about you really hard.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
But when it's constant from the time you wake up till the time you go to bed, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. It sucks. Sucks. What do you think about the whole aspect that the Patterson-Gimlin film might be faked?
Oh, my. I've actually seen two different versions of this, actually. There was an AI program that they just put that through, and it did not detect any fakery involved. In fact, one of his biggest claims was how the skin moved around versus if you have a suit, it'll bunch up in areas like the armpits when they walk. And it could not find any feasible evidence of, and this is just one AI, that there was any kind of hoaxing going on there. So is there another AI now that's saying that it's a hoax?
Well, apparently there is a new movie that's being a documentary called Capturing Bigfoot. It's being shown at South by Southwest right now. And apparently it shows that the suit was faked.
That's very interesting. I literally yesterday watched that on a show that it was like a small documentary of a gentleman, probably a 20-minute one, that had put that video inside of an AI, had it and analyze it. And then from that analysis, because it stabilized the image, zoomed in, zoomed out, did everything, and said it was not a hoax. So it's very interesting. I'm seeing two different ones now that you have both sides coming out.
Oh, I agree. What's new in the UFO world?
Oh my. Oh, this is fun. You know who Steven Spielberg is, don't you?
Of course.
Oh, yes. So, as everybody should know, he was the creator of Close Encounters of the Third Kind as well as E.T. Now, he said some very interesting things of late. And this was a headline during his SXSW keynote on March 13th, where he openly shared his long-standing belief in ETs, in extraterrestrial life. And he had actually said, and this was a quote that I'm going to read to you, a very strong, sneaking suspicion that we are not alone here on Earth right now. Trying this conviction directly to his upcoming film, which is coming out very soon, actually. And I'm actually looking forward to seeing it. It's called Disclosure Day, for anybody that doesn't know. And it's a sci-fi epic. If you watch the teasers, there was one during the Super Bowl game, I want to say halftime, and it explores social reactions or societal reactions if ET was actually to come here and land. It's very interesting the way that he put it, and the timing is absolutely perfect. Have you watched any of the teasers and trailers?
I have.
Oh, what do you think about it?
There's so many clues. So here's the thing. When you get somebody who is as good as Steven Spielberg, it's going to look like they are so tapped in to what is going on. It reminds me of Tom Clancy, my favorite author when he was alive, and his Jack Ryan series. And I remember reading one time where Clancy was actually called into a meeting by the CIA because they were reading his books. So they were like, how do you know this? How do you know this is going on? You shouldn't know this. Are you a spy? And they were questioning him on this. And he basically said, well, I get my information from public source, and then I am a fiction writer. So I put it all together. That's how he gets it. Right. So I think Spielberg is quite the same way, where he's involved himself with some very knowledgeable people. I mean, if you go back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he had J. Allen Hynek in there. Yep. He had Jacques Vallée in there. And with that going on, I think that he has had good people give good research, okay, and lead him in directions to look at. If an alien looks one way, he's probably talked to an experiencer to say, no, that's not the way it walked. That's not the way it acted. Like I'm tripping out over one of the Disclosure Day trailers where you hear that type sound.
Yep.
I remember standing on my patio listening to a conversation at 1:00 in the morning between what was ever up my driveway and what was standing in my backyard. It was a weird night having them in there. And other people have heard that clicking too. We heard that clicking in the movie Signs. Mm-hmm. And now we hear it again in Disclosure Day. And it describes what I have heard and what many other people have heard.
When it comes to these movies, and a lot of people speculate that Close Encounters of the Third Kind, just like you said, Hynek was involved in it, and he had somebody that he could say, okay, what do these craft look like? What do these beings look like? Now, the being that came out of the craft at the very end was real tall and skinny and really interesting looking, but the craft and the noises, like in Signs that you're talking about, a lot of people are suggesting that these are key ways to desensitize us through theater, through movie. And right now, I think most people, if you walk up and say, hey, do you believe the aliens could be real? And most people will say yes. I mean, we're to the point now where if a UFO did land on the White House lawn, so to speak, came out and had an alien shake whoever's hand that showed up, we'd be like, we already seen that in The Simpsons. Oh goodness.
That's very
But
interesting.
oh yeah, and so here's the crazy thing. Not only are we have semi-disclosure going on, you have Arrow going through all kinds of stuff. You have the Pentagon gearing up right now, trying to release things. We're all waiting for it. And then, as I was saying before, activity. The activity that people are seeing in the skies has just blown up exponentially. I mean, all the way from New York to Peru. It is ridiculous. I got a whole bunch of them here that I've been reading about, and it's fairly large events that are happening with multiple witnesses, and it's getting very fun. Did you hear about the Queens one, New York?
No, fill me in on that one.
Yes. So March 8th, and this is still buzzing as of today. And there was a guy named Charlie. Now I'm gonna mess this up a little bit because I kind of get it backwards. Charlie Correa in Corona, Queens. I got it.
Okay.
Stepped outside at about 8:30 and spotted what he thought was, a shooting star. But then two more white lights actually joined in it. He grabbed his phone for an 18-second video showing these three orbs, like luminous orbs, moving in a loose triangular formation. They appeared to be kind of playing with each other and chasing each other. Now, I've seen this before over the deserts in Utah and Nevada, but they weren't lit up. I actually saw them in the backdrop of light. So they appeared to be chasing each other and swerving and hovering, which is kind of fun to watch. And then they would stop abruptly, and then they would move again without any visible means of propulsion. There was no wings, he said, no exhaust, no blinking lights like an aircraft or drone. And one pulled ahead and kind of dived out of view, and the other ones followed. And evidently this is going viral on Reddit right now, which is Reddit UFOs. And outlets like New York Post and Daily Mail even picked this up, Dave, calling it eerie and fueling more speculation. That was a quote. Commenters note similar sightings that night, places like Texas and Ohio, with some theorizing a single large triangular craft or coordinated small objects. And here's what I got out of the FAA, and because they reportedly tracked these UAPs, but declined to comment of any comments specifically. So there's no official explanation yet. Drones near LaGuardia Airport get suggested, but the movement seemed too fluid. I mean, these things are thrust free. They're not hobby. You can hear the drones, the hobby ones. So, and that's just in Queens. And it goes to Poland, to Peru. I mean, it's everywhere. The Poland one's really interesting too. I mean, they got a video from March 13th, and that was in the evening time, around 7 o'clock at night. It shows three bright UFO lights in perfect triangular formation, just like in Queens, and they were moving silently across, the sky. It's short but clear, and there's no sound of conventional aircraft traits coming from this object, and it's shared in other UFO in other UFO circles as classic triangle cases. But I mean, it's pretty clear that people are starting to see a lot more activity in the skies, which is becoming very fun. I'm constantly going out like you, Dave, and looking up.
You have to. And you know what? What's the worst thing that happens if you're outside for a little bit and just looking up? You get to see some beautiful stars. Count some satellites. Maybe figure out your constellations. I love staring up at the stars. It's one of my favorite hobbies, man.
That's one of the biggest things I got here where I live. I can walk right out on my top deck and just stare at them. Of course, I have my phone with me so I can track things. I use it. I have two apps on my phone that I open at all time. One is Flight Radar 24, and the other one is, any kind of star map that I can get a hold of, usually the free ones. But they tell you where all the objects are, like satellites and everything. And if I see something, I compare it to those very quickly. And I right now don't have the ability to see most Air Force and military. I'm still trying to get the keys to get back into that. Once I get that, then I'll start checking everything out that I see in the skies as well.
I got a few years ago a couple of those floating chairs that recline. So that way when I'm staring up at the stars, I could just lay down in the chair. It doesn't hurt my neck. It's fantastic. Absolutely. I recommend them. Those floating chairs. You want to stargaze? Get the floating chairs.
Yeah,
That's
I have a hammock.
totally what it is. Dude, I'm afraid to try and get into a hammock. I'm so clumsy. I won't get into a hammock, you know? But
You got to get the right one.
maybe. Have you been following up on the General McCaslin?
So as of yet, I did have a blurb on that, and especially since the wife, they're still looking. The wife has publicly dismissed UFO related misinformation and emphasized he has no special knowledge on the topic, which is very interesting that they would put that out there. I mean, to specifically state he has no special knowledge on the UFO topic. Okay. Circles like what me and you were in, they link it to disclosure momentum. Most of us are speculating foul play and cover-ups, but I see here that mainstream coverage treats it as a standard missing persons case, and it adds to the eerie layer of the cultural conversation. So what do you got?
Well, there is some fresh audio here that come out from the sheriff's department that I think I definitely want the audience to hear it. I think it's really important, so that way we can actually have an understanding of what is going on here.
Everybody's asking why a silver alert on Mr. McCausland. With New Mexico state statute, a silver alert does not require a formal diagnosis of any mental deterioration. The reason being also is because Mr. McCausland is over 50 years of age. He did state that he was experiencing a mental fog. And because of this information that we received, we decided to do a silver alert. Mr. McCausland, it was confirmed, was looking in to some of his mental fog, but out of respect for the family, I will not go into any further detail.
The mental fog is pretty much what it is. That was his statement about what he was experiencing. That was cited as reasons for stepping down from some different groups that he was working with. I'll clarify it with this. There's no indication, and we are not putting forward that Mr. McCaslin was disoriented, confused. Arguably, he would still be the most intelligent person in the room that any of us would be in. Highly intelligent, highly capable, but that information was given to us early on, and out of an abundance of caution, we escalated to a silver alert to try to garner as much public attention as possible to try to help locate him as soon as possible.
How recent was the mental fog statement? Was it immediately preceding, or is it months ago?
It's been within the prior few months.
Everybody's asking why.
Well, I mean, that's where, we get an intel right there, Matt or Grant, of what is going on, that they believe that there is this mental fog. They're not calling it dementia. They're not calling it Alzheimer's, but just that he has this mental fog. And all I got to say is, okay, it's possible. It's very possible that he has some sort of brain disease or mental malfunction that is going on as we speak, and that's what's caused him to vanish. But the weird part about it is, as far as we know, there is no video of him leaving the house. On his neighbors' cameras, on their Ring cameras, on their security cameras, unless the police are hiding something on that, there's nothing there. And how does somebody just vanish? How do they just disappear? And we're going to continue this conversation when we get back, because there's another aspect to the General McCaslin disappearance that I think has to have a little bit more attention on Spaced Out Radio's UFO Report.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we're clear.
Oh,
I just gotta find this one thing because this is.
I don't know, just the timing of it. Yeah. Oh, we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Just give me a couple seconds here.
I like how that guy said, "Oh, he's the smartest guy in the room."
There is. Oh, stop typing like that.
I want to say so much right now.
I'm getting frustrated here. It's weird. I cannot find this story all of a sudden.
Is it on the general?
It has something to do with him, yeah.
Because there is one on X or Reddit. Now I'm thinking.
Give me 1 second here. That's the one right there. Excuse me.
Oh. Well, I hope everybody in the chat is doing well this evening. It's good seeing y'all.
All right, I got it. We got about $1.20.
Sweet. I didn't realize you were going there right quick, so I took me off surprise.
Yeah.
So I had to go back a few pages.
I can't hear you right now. Just give me a second. I'm trying to pop the tinnitus here a little bit. Of course it didn't work.
I didn't know there was a cure for that.
There isn't.
I'm sorry, bud.
Let's go back. How to cure tinnitus. You can't. Common causes: hearing loss, loud noise exposure, concerts, machinery, headphones, earwax buildup or blockage, Stress and anxiety. Ding, 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 ding. Certain medications. Nope. Jaw issues or neck tension. Neck tension, probably. All right. 5 seconds. Final half hour of tonight's show. It is the UFO Report. Our good friend Grant Baker is with us as we are talking about the disappearance of General Neil McCaslin. Now, one thing we need to remember, Grant, I mean, there's a lot of speculation with what happened, what is going on here. And Lou Elizondo was on Fox News basically saying he does not believe for a second that this is UFO related. Whereas a lot of conspiracy theorists are going to point in that direction because, let's face it, General McCaslin had a multi-billion-dollar mind. He was a brilliant student. He held some of the United States Air Force's most secret programs, including UFOs, which he was involved with. Elizondo went on to say that he was an advisor to the Stars Academy behind the scenes. And this is somebody whose name first came up with the founder of the To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge, and John Podesta in the WikiLeaks leak by Julian Assange on this. So there is a lot of information that this guy knows. And look, it's not just about aliens and UFOs. We're talking electronic warfare and all sorts of specialized weaponry and technology that the U.S. had developed, Grant.
Yeah, and he even oversaw classified space weapons programs. He served as a chief engineer on GPS, directed special Pentagon programs, and managed a $2.2 billion science tech budget. This dude's off the charts.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He had a multi-million-dollar brain.
Yep.
So how he vanishes, could it be somebody who wants information from that brain? But let's throw a caveat in here for a second. Okay, because this is where it gets interesting and the conspiracy theorists might be onto something here, because his former assistant, a lady named Monica Jacinto Reza, okay, disappeared in the same area around June of 2025. Yes.
What?
She did. Now, Reza was very much into technology. She worked very closely with General McCaslin. And look, we're not saying there was anything nefarious going on here, but this is what it said. The Air Force started funding Reza's. This is by Ross Coulthart, by the way. Okay. The Air Force started funding Reza's super alloy work in 1999. McCaslin commanded AFRL from May 2011 to July 2013, overseeing $4.4 billion in science, technology, and customer-funded research and development at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. His budget directly funded the programs that depended on Reza's alloy AR-1, hydrocarbon boost Air Force propulsion. She was brilliant, and she vanished as well. And 4 days after she was reported missing, she apparently was deceased or reported deceased. However, nobody knows if she was actually found or not. Now, could something have happened? Could it be a little bit more than just a coincidence that 60-year-old Monica Reza at 4'11" and 101 pounds had just vanished? Now, pardon me, I don't believe it was in the same area. It was in California that she disappeared. I apologize. I want to correct that. Okay. So is there a tie-in to her vanishing and now General McCaslin vanishing?
So far that I've been seeing, the Reza one is very interesting, but most of the theories are a silencing, quote unquote, silencing theory. Exactly like almost all of us suspect. If you disappear and there's no trace, all the things that are most important to you are left behind. There's no camera within 700 homes that they searched on Ring cameras. Nobody found this dude. He didn't even, it was like he just went outside and disappeared. It's super, super like conspiracy theorists and X and you name it. Anybody that's reading this is just going crazy right now. You don't even have to be a conspiracy theorist to see through the lines on this one.
But that's what I'm saying. Like her disappearance is very strange. Ross Coulthart put on X, as the search continues for Major General Neil McCaslin, grave new questions about his former colleague who also disappeared while hiking in the same area. Someone declared Monica Jacinto Reza dead and buried 4 days into the search, while SAR teams, search and rescue, from half the state of California were still combing the mountainsides. I mean, does that not seem weird?
That doesn't make a bit of sense at all. Not at all. Everybody knows that person's missing. Everybody's searching for her, and all of a sudden you come up with this story that, oh no, she accidentally, unalived or whatever happened and has already had a service. Not even close. I mean, and in fact, Ross Coulthart called what's going on with the general is a grave national security crisis. And if you go into that, I mean, he's held some of the most sensitive secrets in his head when it comes to UFOs.
Well, this is David Politis like, okay? So this is from the search and rescue, from this report on the Sentinel Network.substack.com. They mapped every search track on CalTopo, or Topo for topography, to prevent overlap across 40 to 50 mile radius. They ran canines. They deployed what Vienna described as forensic technology, photography, airships, drones, canines, and other specialized tools with nearly no available resource untapped. One piece of physical evidence was recovered. On the morning of June 23rd, approximately 24 hours after the disappearance, a beanie belonging to Reza was found in a steep ravine south of the ridge, descending towards Devil's Canyon. Scent dogs tracked Reza's trail from the upper ridge downward and successfully followed it to the beanie. They lost the scent entirely after that. No exit trail, no trail in any direction. Reza's scent simply stopped at the beanie and went nowhere.
And that was Mount Waterman, the San Gabriel Mountains.
Yes.
Yep. Interesting.
And
she was 60. So
as of March 2026, Monica Reza has not been found. So,
wild.
Oh, pardon me. There's a little bit more here because I skipped over it accidentally. The day she went missing, someone reported hearing a woman screaming in the general vicinity. The original witness was never publicly identified. The time and exact location were never disclosed. A lip balm was later found far from both the last known position and the beanie. Subject A insisted it looked new and was hers. The only photo provided showed it looking weathered. Forum investigators noted that it was a common brand that could have belonged to any of the hundreds of searchers who had already covered the area in the weeks before it surfaced. Yeah, this is so weird.
So, riddle me this. I mean, you got two people, and you got a very interesting timing and patterns because she disappears of June of 25, hiking with no trace. McCaslin vanishes February 27th of 26 on foot from homes. From both of them leave their homes. and he leaves all his stuff behind. And this is 8 months
Oh,
apart,
dude,
but they were
dude.
both avid outdoorsmen, women.
I'm freaking out right now.
What's up?
My second microphone in the studio, it was sitting up like this, and then it just turned into 180.
We're on to something.
I have like goosebumping here. This is like 3 feet in front of me. 3 feet in front of me, right there. 3 feet in front of me. I am flipping out right now. Flipping out. Oh my God. Okay. All right, let's continue. Sorry for interrupting. That scared me. That scared me right there. So you're right, though. Like, getting back on topic, it is. Now I'm staring at my microphone, waiting for it to move again. All right.
Like a paper in the guitar strings.
If you add in both of them, multi-billion-dollar brains, multi-billion dollars worth of knowledge in their heads, okay, there is potentially something strange going on. And of course, in any investigation, the police are not going to give up any of that. You know, she's in California, he's in New Mexico, obviously not an affair going on. So it is, Grant, just one of those weird traits. Why two of the same people who were so tightly put together all of a sudden vanish?
There was a story about Reza, and it's what people are calling the broader cleanup of things. I mean, you're talking about a gal that had very, what is the word, novel alloys, I guess you would call, very exotic materials, knowledge of these materials. And there was a theory, and it's part of a string of suspicions, that there was losses in these advanced, like, physics and propulsions adjacent fields to the UAP and UFO stuff. And she was a part of that. And so you have somebody that has all these interesting and very novel materials that certain, how would I say this, other countries, I guess, would be very interested in. And so there was like this novel tie-in where the others are influencing tech races, and our foreign adversaries are having recoveries, and they're targeting US experts. Is a lot of speculation on that as well. And when you have somebody like Reza going into the mountains and they find the beanie and the lipstick or lip gloss or whatever it is, and this is somebody that was always in the mountains, always hiking, and you don't tell somebody where you went when you're going out there. You know, it's like that guy that spent 170 some odd hours out in the, you know, with his hand stuck in a rock. You know, you tell somebody you're going out there. So it just, none of this lines up. And the similarities between these two are too profound to ignore.
I would agree with you. It is a little too coincidental. We're going to continue following this. Grant, we got 7.5 minutes left. What do you got for us?
So we have the Peru one that I wanted to tell you guys about. And it was very interesting that we're getting all these sightings. Everybody, I encourage you to, if you're interested in this subject, look these up. It's happening every day. It's a flood of information. And it's very interesting when you have things in New York and things in Utah and Texas. Well, in this month, recently, another compelling clip was forwarded around the 15th, 16th. That shows a semi-transparent, semi-visible object, and it was appearing over a small town in Peru. The witnesses actually described them as glitching in and out of visibility, and we've heard this before, like a matrix glitch. And it's taking solid shape at times and then glowing, and they reported that it deployed smaller spheres, which we've heard constantly over the years, where you'll see a bigger orb or object dispersing smaller ones underneath it. They were that were scanning the area below on this one, like in grid light patterns, or possibly surveying terrain or infrastructure, whatever was under them. Of course, these witnesses, they were walking downhill and caught it unknowingly at first. So there's analysts on it, including some in the community like Eddie Abbott, who ran deepfake AI checks and called it authentic, and that there was no obvious hoax markers, because there are markers in videos if you manage to edit them a little bit, including pictures. You can edit them, but there's always a watermark that says edited by this software and blah blah blah, and it's deep within the code. And one described it as one of the better civilian captures with the spheres deploying from a main craft. There is no official word, but I'm excited because you have enthusiasts with the showing the scanning behavior, and almost makes you wonder what they're looking for. But there's ongoing reports of mystery orbs over, like, let's say Laguna Beach. There was some over there in California, ocean views, nightly sightings with swooping motions. Some say they've been consistent for weeks. There's a couple scattered orb videos from March 14th, one heading north and one heading east. It's basic, but adding to the cluster vibe of what we're seeing. And then, there's the general uptick in orbs in the Southwest United States, from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, all around mid-March. With the same thing, it's glowing lights in coordinated patterns and color shifts. And you can pick these up on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook. People are posting them wherever their social media sites are. And it's actually kind of becoming difficult to follow them all, to be honest with you. And ever since this whole subject's been going down, you have old presidents and new presidents saying something about it. And now you got the Pentagon and Aero, ramping up we're going to let stuff out. And then you have the two disappearances. Well, the one disappearance with the general. Then you have tons more sightings. Now, I don't know if that correlates just because it's in the news media. I've heard this before. Once people kind of become aware of it, more people are looking up. And that may be the case. And now more people are starting to catch these things.
I think that, the benefit of what we see going on in the UFO world, where people are starting to take that opportunity to say, hey, maybe I can catch something outside. I think we're going to get more videos. I think we're going to get more captures, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I went, as of last week, I rolled myself into my room and dusted off the camera because I haven't been outside for a while. And I'm going to start going out on the top deck in my little wheelchair, and I'm going to start staring at the sky for a while.
Mm-hmm. You're going to be one of those people who just, has some deep thoughts, memes coming out of that.
Maybe. I don't know. There's maybe I'll sit there and will one into existence in front of me and get a good picture of it.
No, that would be great. We got about 3 minutes to go here before we have to say goodnight to you and goodnight to everybody on the show. The one thing that I want people to do, and I talk very critically at times about UFOs. I talk very critically about a lot of things on this show, as much as I'm a believer, but I think it's exciting when you have somebody brand new to the subject, like I was a long time ago, and they see something that they can't explain. Enjoy the moment. Okay, sure. Do your homework. Learn what the International Space Station is doing. Learn when Starlink is flying over. You don't want to be one of those people who is recording Starlink after so many years and trying to pass it off as a fleet of UFOs coming over the horizon. Don't be that person. But when you see something that doesn't make sense, okay, where all of a sudden you think you're watching at satellites and they stop, or you think you're watching a black triangle like I did, and all of a sudden the front light does a 90-degree angle and shoots to the south. Those are moments right there, man, that are so worth it. It is so worth the time to go sit outside. And look, you could complain about it being cold. You could complain about the mosquitoes. Like, look, I can tell you right now, I got snow on my deck. I am not going outside in this weather to go look for UFOs. But come springtime, come summertime and fall, take the time to look up. Take the time. And you know what? If you live near a military base, that actually benefits you because you know what's flying there. You know what kind of jets they're flying. You'll know what time they are flying, and so on and so forth. And when you learn your scenario and you learn your surroundings, you realize that something may be there that you haven't even seen before. It is so worth it. Give yourself the break and just go outside and look up. And the worst case scenario, have some fun with it. Take your kids outside and say, hey, let's see who can count the most satellites tonight. Let's see who can find the International Space Station if it's flying by. It doesn't have to be about UFOs. Can you name the constellations? What about a nice clear night where you actually get to see the Milky Way and all of her beautiful colors? It's worth it. That's all I'm saying. And I think you feel the same way too, Grant.
I definitely do. Thank you so much, my man.
It is absolutely great. A great UFO report from Grantavius Maximus from UFO Max, Grant Baker, and the UFO report. We'll talk to him in a couple of nights' time. And for the rest of you, as we say, stare up at the stars, because you never know what you're going to find. We will leave you with that as we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Rocket in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Rocket us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Good job, Granty Baker.
Same to you, my man. That was fun.
You're fun. People look at you and they're like, that Grant, he's fun.
I'm a real fun guy.
You're that kind of guy.
I can be. I can be.
How was your Austin 316 day?
Well, I got a boot and they want me to still lay down for 2 more weeks. Yay. I did get my cane from... Here, I'll show you this bad boy. I got to show it to you in pieces. But I did get my cane, my special made cane, and I'm looking forward to using that. And according to the gentleman that made it, I can get through TSA with it, but technically it can be considered a weapon, I guess. So we'll see what happens there when I come down to Vegas and see everybody.
Well, we got to pick a date for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got a while.
We got time. We got time. To the rest of you, I'm going to edit this show up, and I'm going to head off to bed after that. Grant, stick around for a minute or two.
You got it.
And tomorrow night on the show, Swamp Dweller will be here. We're heading to the... I can't talk.
Yeah.
We are heading to the swamp with the Swamp Dweller himself. Good story time tomorrow night. So be ready for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you tonight to JSCO, Area 54, and Pam for your super chats. Thank you to everyone who has hit subscribe, rang that bell on our channel, and given us a thumbs up for tonight. It helps with the algorithms. And I'm going to be selfish here for a second. Please go support my Haunted 108 project, youtube.com/The Haunted 108. I'd love it if you guys go and hit subscribe. I just started it yesterday. I'm at 45 subscribers. Let me hit 50 by the end of the night so I can go to sleep knowing that I'm halfway to 100. That's what I ask. I don't think that's too much. youtube.com/The Haunted 108. We'll talk very soon. And Grant, you stick around. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.